Welcome to the 517 In Your Business podcast. Here's your host, Mary Gaida.
We are back today with Eric Hanna, employee benefits consultant with Risk Strategies. Eric has spent 2 decades, 20 years in healthcare from various seats at the table. We're talking about healthcare administrator, business leader, now in the consultant role as he helps businesses right here in Lansing optimize their employee benefits. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks, Mary. It's great to be back. We were just saying how fast the calendar's flipping, and I can't believe it's been a month since our last conversation, but thanks for having me.
I learned so much, so I appreciate every time you come on, and I hope our listeners are learning as much as I am, if not more. So this is our third episode focused on how employers can deliver employee benefits. We've covered some really interesting topics in episode 1 and 2, and I encourage our listeners to head over to our website and listen to the other ones if they've missed them, because so much good information out there for them. In particular, though, Eric, you had shared a story that I can't seem to get out of my mind, and it was about how your dog was charged less for a prescription than you. And that just seems outlandish to me.
It seems outlandish. It is outlandish, and it's 100% true all at the same time. Yeah, I for the same prescription that was intended for my dog, I was going to be billed $120, and thankfully for him, it was just $10.
How does that happen?
Yeah, I know, right? I was presenting for a company recently and shared that same story, and immediately afterwards, someone approached me and told me their story, and it was similarly wild. They were concerned about a medical issue. They went to the emergency room after hours. Thankfully, it was nothing serious, but they were administered the initial dose of an antibiotic. And once discharged, they were sent home, sent with a prescription. They went and filled it at their local pharmacy. Later, they went back and looked at the bill, and the first dose of that antibiotic in the hospital, they were charged $20. When they look back at their bill for the remaining, whatever it was, 7 or 14 days of the same antibiotic, they paid less than $4 for that entire fill. And so like we've talked about before, my mission is to help employers and their team pay that $4 amount, not the $20 amount. Or like in the case of my dog, help them pay the $10 amount rather than $120 amount.
Right. It really, really adds up. So in this episode, we're diving into how business leaders can do just that and flip the script on their benefit strategy.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation, which, by the way, we're in the fall, like we said, calendar's moving. First full weekend of the NFL season.
Yes.
So I thought we could put a little sports context to our conversation too today. And by the way, Lions at Green Bay, week 1, I saw online that the over-under for the Lions is 10.5 wins. So what do you think, Mary? Are the Lions going to get better than 10.5 wins this season?
A picture came in my mind this morning of a sign I made for a friend a few years ago for Christmas, and it was in Lions colors, and it had the word believe.
Yes.
And so I'm going to believe. I'm going to choose to believe. This is the year.
Lions fans are eternal optimists, right? So
yes.
I'm with you. I think the Lions are going to do better than 10.5.
Yeah.
So, but when it comes to benefits, employers can move from playing defense in the sports context to playing offense and truly taking control. And actually just yesterday, Mercer, a large consulting firm in this space, released a report that last year employee premiums increased an average of 6 to 7% nationally. And they expect them to increase 9%, which is 50% greater increase when left uncontrolled by employers in 2026. And those sound like single digit numbers, but those are significant increases and cost shifts to the employees through these benefit plans. So there's no better time to kind of flip from this defensive posture that I see many companies playing and helping them move into more an offensive position where they're taking control.
Right. So I would like to dive in on what defense versus offense in this particular situation looks like. And so when it comes to employee benefits or the rising healthcare costs specifically, what does defense look like for most organizations?
For most companies, that's the position that they're put in, and that's the market that they live in. And so by no fault of their own, this has been the pervasive model. I think we've talked enough about this that, I see a different path. But, talking about that common profile, I think this might, raise the hair on the back of the neck of some of our listeners, or your listeners. But the common profile for a company playing defense, a couple things. One, renewal options seem to repeat the same narrow offering. So often they're bouncing from carrier A to carrier B every couple of years or so.
Hmm.
Cost control hinges on balancing increases in premium with shifting costs to the employee in the plan. And basically what that means is they're put in a position of trading for lower premium, but a greater deductible or a copay or those kinds of things. Timing for decisions is often pretty short. Renewal proposals are sometimes given inside 90 days. Decisions are rushed if it just doesn't feel like you ever get the full breadth of what the options are. There might be limited insight into how employees are using their plans. Communication really just happens at open enrollment. Process might be antiquated. Maybe they're still using paper forms, those kind of things. So if employers are checking, more than one of those boxes, they may be in a more defensive position.
Okay, so let's flip the script on that and talk about playing offense and what that means in practical terms.
Yeah, when employers are playing offense, they're really in the driver's seat. And so they have regular communication proactively throughout the year with their employees, what the benefits are, how great they are, reminding them of some of the nuances that maybe got lost in the shuffle during open enrollment. Employers have, regular insights into how the plan is being used and how it's performing. Data and analytics is a really important part of the regular cadence throughout the year. So they know how their employees are using it. There's a longer runway when you have that data to look future and understand what the predicted costs are going to be in that next year, rather than having that kind of reactive, look, here's the renewal and we didn't know what was coming. They can pull different cost containment levers to help them in the plans save money. They may have greater confidence in how it works, and then integrating technology and making this a more seamless experience for everybody is often part of the offensive game plan. So I don't know. For me, I've been in an operator's role, but just kind of talking through those things, that just makes my shoulders drop. Like I just feel like it's a more welcome position for many business owners.
Right. I'm sure you're not alone in that. So if that's the landscape though, why do so many companies sort of get stuck on the defense of it all?
Oh, that's a great question. I just had an owner say to me the other day, he's in the construction business, and he said, when I started my business, I didn't realize I'd be entering into the healthcare business.
Mm,
And I think so for many owners and leaders, they're not in their industry to be healthcare specialists, right? But indirectly, with how our system is worked with employer-based health plans, that's part of their business.
yeah.
And they're busy running the rest of their business. It's bigger than just the healthcare part or the employee benefits part, right? They're managing competition and trying to grow their own business in those different ways. So it just becomes a segment, but it's such an important thing because it drives so much of their expenses related to their employees. But so it's hard to slow down and think about doing something differently. And sometimes they may not be aware that there's an off ramp to this. So, but I find that those that do explore playing offense get it immediately and dive right in. And there was a time when the defensive model was fine, but businesses are in a position which requires a new approach. So
Right.
it sort of reminds me of that old definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different result. It just
Right.
doesn't work anymore.
Right. Like our sweet lions,
Right.
had to change things up. So what are the hidden
The
costs?
eternal optimist will say not this year, right?
Right. Let's talk about the hidden costs: financial, cultural, leadership credibility, and staying in that reactive stance.
Yeah, in the defensive model, it's beyond just the direct cost, just the premium that they're paying every month. There's a definite impact. So the administration of the benefits can be burdensome to the internal team, which probably is spread thin to begin with.
Mhm.
There could be errors and process issues around open enrollment, which requires rework or, employees not being enrolled properly or things like that, having to go back and change things. That obviously adds to the burden. There's compliance risks. There could be a lack of appreciation or perception from employees that these are true quote unquote benefits. And you don't want those sort of questions and confusion from employees. And like you said that credibility word, employees are looking for leaders to have their back in this way, and they're trusting that they're going to be providing the best option for them. So, keeping that in mind is a challenge in that defensive posture.
Absolutely. So If I'm a CFO or I'm an HR professional and I'm listening to this podcast thinking, okay, I might be on the defensive end of this spectrum, what's the first mindset shift that I need to make?
Yes, I would say run your benefits like you run the rest of your business. Insurance and healthcare costs shouldn't get a pass.
Mm,
It's not something that's all that different from how they're doing other things. If I'm sure they're engaged in supply chain issues in their business, or they're, trying to move the needle forward in developing a certain new product or process or whatever. Healthcare and those costs shouldn't get a pass and sit on the sidelines. So run your benefits like you run the rest of your business. The breadth and market and the tools for control and the opportunity to improve the experience has never been better. So there's plenty of opportunity and new ways to approach this rising cost challenge.
so we've been talking in football terms during this podcast. So let's talk about the practical playbook. What does going on offense actually look like day to day?
Yeah, risk strategies. At Risk Strategies, we just released what we call the Optimized Health Plan Workbook. I like playbook better. Your words better. Um, and it's really a guide for employers to think about some of these questions. And we kind of like rattle them back and forth pretty quickly, but it really dials it down into item by item check boxes and helps employers walk through the process of that transition, whether it's demographics in a multi-generational workforce, how they're using technology, some of those administration considerations, compliance, and different funding models like level funding, captives, and self-funding their health plan.
So let's talk about transparency. I know it's not a buzzword, but I feel like it's a word I'm hearing more and more. So, what role does transparency play in moving from defense to offense?
Right. When we're moving to offense, employers are paying for what their employees actually use. Well, how do you know that? You need to know how it's actually being used,
Right.
right? So transparency is huge. And to be honest, the healthcare system hasn't historically been all that transparent, or at least easy to navigate and understand some of those cost drivers. So from the health plan utilization side, it should be transparent, and employers deserve to know how their employees are using their benefits. So to make good decisions, you can't fly it blind, so to speak. And employers, I think, can take a bit of a step into the transparency realm with how and how often they're communicating these challenges with their team and their employees. Allow employees to be partners in combating this issue because everybody's in that boat. So it's hard. And I think being transparent about it being hard is it's good to have that kind of authenticity.
Yeah, amen to that. So people are listening, they know you know what you're talking about, and they're saying, Eric, what specific strategies can we as employers do to shift to offense?
I'll put it this way. The kind of the core of what we're talking about today is that in the defensive position, there's actually a void of a strategy, since you use that word.
Mhm.
There's a bit of a void. We're reacting. We're not dictating what the next step is. We as business owners and leaders, I mean, we're not in that defensive position. We're reacting to what somebody else is giving us. So there's that void
Yes.
of a strategy in place. So employers are kind of in that on their heels that way. So they can smooth out the expectations by building a multi-year strategy and implementing it in a proactive way. Again, just like they likely do in other parts of their business. The employer can accomplish certain goals. Maybe it's a year one, they've got these three sets of goals. In year two, it's
Mhm.
these sets of goals. In year three and beyond, and start moving the needle forward in the areas we're talking about, like communication costs, employee wants, needs, transparency, etc.
Well, it kind of sounds exhausting. So for a business leader who's tried and is now tired of playing defense, what's one action that they can take in the next, say, 30 days to start moving toward that offense?
Yep. My one thing is, as many companies are heading into renewal season, most companies have a January 1 renewal, so they may be making some of these tough decisions in the near future. Is that they don't have to be experts in this necessarily. That's what people like. That's what, my role is, and other people like me that are in my business. But If I were to give one piece of advice, I would say to expect better. Don't accept the status quo. And you said it in the last episode, actually. You said they can be their own advocate. And you were
Hmm.
referencing how employees and members can be their own advocate in the healthcare
Yes.
journey, but employers can also be their own advocate and expecting more from this side of the business. It's reasonable to expect transparency. It's reasonable to expect options beyond the traditional spreadsheet, and it's reasonable to have more time to process decisions and implement them like they would in other ways of their business.
One of the things I learned from a James Clear book was, when you make these decisions to shift something and then you put in a little bit every day, you'd be amazed at what things look like, a year down the road. So if we check back in a year, what are some of the signs that would show that an organization has truly flipped that script and now they're leading rather than just reacting?
Uh, what I wish for every business leader who's navigating these challenges is that there's no surprises. I think
Mm,
one of the toughest things when from the business leader perspective in navigating this is they tend to be caught off guard in the defensive model. In the offensive model, they already see far enough ahead to be able to make decisions and anticipate change and know what the next steps might be and have that game plan of what their goals and their ultimate vision for this is. So no surprises. The buyer experience shouldn't be riddled with unknowns. So I just think from my side of the table, we can do better.
that's great. You've given again so much information today. And I know you give a lot on your LinkedIn. You're always posting really thoughtful kind of thought leadership and really giving the information out there. So what else would you like us to know? And tell me where we can find you on sites like LinkedIn to follow and get more information.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Please, connect with me or connect with me on LinkedIn. I do my best to provide some level of insight into some of these challenges. Risk strategies, we're always producing new guides and white papers and things like that also help out. So, if anybody ever has a question, they can message me through LinkedIn. I'm always happy to help.
Well, thank you so much for coming back to the podcast again. Looking forward to our next conversation.
Thanks.
Go Lions.
Thanks for listening to the 517 In Your Business podcast. Get to know local businesses better by reading 517 Business Magazine. Get your subscription at 517mag.com/subscribe.